Hello again. Okay, how do you pick your tarot deck? First point of note is please, certainly for the purposes of this course and learning tarot, make sure you buy a tarot deck. I know that sounds really like, I'm being a little bit, assuming that you're being stupid, but I'm not, okay? Bear with me. On the market today, there is a huge amount of different card decks. A lot of them don't really follow the traditional tarot layout. There are a lot of what are called oracle decks. Now, don't get us wrong, I have nothing against oracle decks. I own quite a few sets. But they're not they don't necessarily tie in with the same patterns and imagery of tarot. A lot of oracle decks are actually based on the major cards, but for the purposes of learning, please get a 78 card tarot deck that's based on the traditional tarot cards. That doesn't say it has to be one of the traditional ones, but as long as it's based on, the tarot principle, and it's, let's say, just check the numbers, make sure it's a 78 card deck and it's something tarot, and you'll be on the right lines. Beyond that, really is, and this, there's no big mystical answer to this. It kind of is mystical, but your initial response to it probably won't be. It is basically whatever cards you like the look of. These are going to be a tool you work with a lot, especially for me. I work with them blinking all the time. And granted, I do own a few decks, quite a few decks, so I can switch between them a lot. But saying that, for the amount of decks I use, there are certain decks that I will use all the time just because I really love the imagery on the decks and I can work with them over others. So yeah, the main rule is make sure you are buying a tarot deck, a 78 card tarot deck based on the major and minor cards. And beyond that, it is, whatever imagery speaks out to you the most. There are tarot decks based on everything now. I seen a steampunk tarot the other day. It looked so pretty. But everything: fairies, mermaids, cats, vampires, like literally think of a topic and there will be a tarot card or a tarot deck made based on that topic. So there is a huge market. Sometimes, and this is advice I give out quite often, people are like, I really don't know, I just can't pick a deck, I don't know where to start. In which case, my advice would be always to go with one of the really well-known traditional decks. The Rider-Waite is a really well-known one. The traditional cards, the only thing with them is sometimes the imagery is harder to work with. I have a Marcel's deck, which I use quite a lot, which is this one that I'm going to show you. And this deck, just go through the cards here. As you can see, this is based on very old artwork. And I quite like that. I quite like the traditional artwork, and I do use this deck a lot. So as you can see there, you have, very traditional imagery. This is one of the original decks. And, this was designed hundreds of years ago. Tarot readers still use it. This is one of my favourites. I've actually got my two favourite ones here. In contrast to that, there's this deck which I work with a lot as well. As you can see straight up there, this is a completely different look to this deck. It's very modern, it's very stylized. The imagery in it is totally different. But it's just one that I connect really well with. I really like the imagery on it. I can take a lot from it. And yeah, so let's say two completely different, totally at different ends of the spectrum there. But both, I like them both. I can work with them both as well as the other. What I would say is good about they both have their pros and cons. The traditional decks are good because all the more modern decks are based on them. So if you learn a traditional deck, moving on to a modern one will probably come very easily to you. The modern ones tend to have more imagery in them, and this is a really important factor, which is again why I said pick imagery based on something you connect with. We're going to go into this in more detail when we go into the card meanings, but basically every time you look at a card, you know, depending on who you're reading for, what the question is, you know, it could even be the same question posed by the same person in 2 different time frames. You will get a slightly different meaning from the card, and that's just building up your intuition, your, you know, psychic development skills. It comes with time. It's not something that you will start doing straight away, but eventually every time you turn a card, it will mean something different than the last time you saw it. And for me, because I'm quite a visual person, that comes through in the imagery of the card. Something about it will stand out, and I will make a connection to that, and that image will represent something for me. You know, I'm just kind of looking through the deck here. You know, like here, you know, on the moon card, we have the moon traditionally means, you know, trusting intuition, and not thinking too much about logic. But occasionally I've had this card up, and the mask that you can see there has really stood out to me. And when it's not just about trusting their intuition, it's about trusting their intuition when something is being disguised or hidden from them, because that's what masks do. And that bit really, it was the first thing my eye was drawn to when I turned the card over. So the way your cards look is massively important. So bear that in mind when you're buying a deck. The other thing I would say is, if you haven't bought a deck and you've just found yourself with one, which quite often happens, you know, I hear a lot of people say, oh, I've got this deck lying around, someone gave us it and I've never known what to do with it. Probably a really good thing, and that's probably the deck you'll use the most. A lot of my decks have come to me from friends giving them to me. I've kind of found them in old boxes and can't remember buying them. Random things like that, and it's become such a, you know, commonly said thing. It's got a little bit cliched now, but often the best sort of magical or divination tools you will ever use are the ones that just kind of found their way into your hands without you really going looking for them. So bear that in mind as well. But yes, if you're going tarot shopping, those are the things to bear in mind. Make sure it is a tarot deck, a 78 card deck with major and minor cards and 4 suits in the minor cards. Not that we're looking at that at the minute, but it's a good indicator that you are buying a tarot deck. And imagery that you can connect with. It's something you like. You know, it doesn't have to be something massively serious. You know, it can be something you just find fun, but it just has to be something that speaks out to you. So I hope that helped in your shopping quests for tarot. I'm very experienced at shopping for tarot. There's lots of it in my house. Okay.